Hello everyone, Dan here from the Next Issue Podcast. On today's video, I'll be doing a review for Shogun Episode 4, The Eightfold Fence. Just if you're barely catching up, let me give you a quick synopsis of the show, and then we'll talk more about this specific episode. When a mysterious European ship is found marooned nearby fishing village, Lord Yoshi Toranaga discovers secrets that could tip the scales of power and devastate his enemies. In this episode, John Blackthorne and Mariko test their new alliance as they train Toranaga's gun regiment for a war. Yabushige must navigate his past promises to Ishido when an old friend comes to the village. This show stars Hiroyuki Sanada as Yoshi Toranaga, Cosmo Jarvis as John Blackthorne, Anna Sawai as Toto Mariko, Tobanado Asano as Kashigi Yabushige, Takehiro Hira as Ishido Kazunari, and Nestor Carbonell as Vasco Rodriguez. Although we don't see Vasco this episode, I don't know if we'll see him anymore going forward. That'll be interesting to see if he comes back after the events of last episode. All right. Real quick, this episode was much of a slow burn, a lot slower, a lot more. Uh, this feels like we finally got to a point where we had to let a few things simmer. We don't really see a lot of Toranaga in this episode. We see him as they arrive into the village, but then he kind of leaves somewhere else. He has his son who's in charge, and his nephew who's kind of like, the lord of the village. So, um, really interesting relationships there. We'll get into that in a minute. So, I'm going to go into a little bit of spoilers now to kind of go through the episode, so you've been warned. So after they all arrive in the village from the journey and the sea, um, John wishes to see his crew. So they're back to kind of where we started. He wishes to see his crew and his ship, but they won't let him. It won't be that easy. So it looks like John's been given the task to train Toranaga's men for maybe an upcoming conflict. But he really is feeling like a prisoner, specifically towards the beginning of the issue. It looks like whatever towards the beginning of the episode, it looks like whatever deal he had with Toranaga was not fully clear. So that's interesting as well. Um, Fuji, who is now assigned John's consort, stepping in because John just gets his he's a hothead. There's conflict everywhere, so that was really good to see. Whenever he has any issues, whenever John has any issues with somebody around, he has a lot of people to kind of help him out. In this case, mainly Fuji, and also Mariko, who's still running around translating for him. So John has been named Haramoto, who is like, I guess, the person who's going to be training. I don't know the exact translation, but the context is that this is somebody that's been assigned to train, so they're a guest of the Lord, and they are to be treated well. Um, of course, John doesn't have a lot of experience when it comes to artillery fighting, or fighting with on the ground. He is a naval fighter, so he advises that he can show them naval warfare tactics, how to use the cannons, and that's kind of like that's really where we spend the majority of the first part of the episode, with John trying to figure out how to navigate this uneasy alliance. After that, we do see that Mariko discovers John's true orders from the book that they were given. We also see something really interesting that just kind of made me think. John experiences his first earthquake, and that was such a it's such an interesting detail to add, because I never even thought, like, there are people that have never experienced an earthquake, or been in a part of the world where they have things that happen like that. Like in Japan, earthquakes and tsunamis are very common. They even bring that up in the show, so it's really interesting. Um, Now we know that there's a spy in the village who we are still trying to suss out, and I think this episode gives us a little bit of a few possibilities. We have Kiku, who is the nephew's wife, I guess, kind of girlfriend. I don't really know their relationship, but they were definitely having sexy time in this episode. Um, so yeah, if Kiku is the mole, no wonder her nephew hasn't found her. So he's distracted by other things. We do see that Ishido's men show up. This is where we see that one of them is Yabushige's friend, or old acquaintance. And this is where I was also wondering, like, is Yabushige acting shady because he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? If he goes back to Osaka, they'll kill him, or he'll be asked to kill himself, or does he stay here and also because he's being loyal to Toranaga? Interesting stuff. Like, I think um what's his name? Tadanobu Asano does a really good job of kind of like playing that line as this character where you don't really know where the alliances really lie. But I think this brings up a really interesting thing that happens towards the end of the episode. Ishido's men will stick around overnight to, oversee their training or whatever, like just so they can have a bit of knowledge. I don't really know what Yabushiga's playing at here. We do have a really touching scene between John and Fuji, where they exchange gifts. John gives Fuji one of his guns. She, in return, asks him to carry around her family swords. We learn a little bit about Fuji and how her family was killed at the beginning to kind of stop a war from happening. There's a lot of plotting in different levels, like the nephew's plotting. Nagakato, who is Yoshi's son, he's also plotting. Of course, we have Yabushige. Um, we have a really touching scene as well between Mariko and John, where they kind of exchange a little bit of history. John tells her about London and all that. So it was almost as if I would feel like it's the equivalent of what would be a like a first date back then, which is interesting because I don't really know where the relationship's going with them. Uh, there's also some sexy time for John, which even though he had denied that he's like, I don't need to pillow anyone, as they call it. And then in the last scene, we we think that they're about to give a demonstration to Ishido's men, and instead, uh, Nagakato, who is Yoshi's son, he hid cannons and killed Ishido's men. And Mariko mentioned, like, this is kicking off a war. Like, a war has been officially started. So this episode leaves you on a big high. The previews for next episode look chilling and really cool and amazing, and I can't wait. This show continues to kick ass. It's just a really fun time of television. So quite enjoying this. So if you're watching this, let me know what you thought of Shogun episode 4. As always, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember to share, like, subscribe. Stay tuned. We have more comic reviews, trailer reactions, TV recaps. Make sure to ring that bell so you know when we go live. That is most Saturdays, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And as always, thank you for watching, everyone. Bye bye.